Hello and welcome to a new session on the topic ArchiMate for Architecture Modeling in alignment with the TOGAF ADM Architecture Development Method. Today we will use a hypothetical example of an online store. And in this example, you are the architect, enterprise architect in the organization, and you have been assigned the architecture work package to remodel the business architecture of the return process for this online store. The motivation behind this assignment, the concern of the management that the reports have shown that there is a very high amount of losses due to the returns. Most of the items are being damaged, not reusable, not resellable, and at the scale this online store is operating, this loss is quite sustainable, is quite significant, and that's why you need to come up with a solution proposal, a new business architecture model for this process. Let's get started and see how we can model this process. Start by creating an architecture view, and we call it case study return process, and this is the actual state, the actual situation. So this is the is architecture. We'll create another view, give it the same name, we can call it target architecture, 2P architecture, architecture proposal also is fine. Let's stick with target architecture. So what is the process like at the moment? So you have been as an architect sitting down with the sales, with the operations team. We have seen how the process is modeled. This doesn't come up, you don't sit in silo and come up with the model on your own. This would be a result of a lot of discussions and meetings to get your hands on the actual state. So you have found out that the customer first, after he receives the item, he finds out it's not fitting or it's damaged. However, the reason is, we can also model the different reasons why it is returned in different branches, so that we can also devise solutions for each state, for each branch. So the first thing that he does, he initiates a return process. This is the first step the customer takes. After he initiates a return process, he gets a QR code or a label to return the item. He packages the item and delivers it to the nearest point where the delivery team can take over. You can see here we have used a service. This actually should be a process. We can drop the article so that it's more concise. The same we can do here. We can drop the article for brevity sake. And then the next step, he drops the items at the station where it is being picked. At this stage, the operations delivery, the third party kicks in and picks the item from the station. So here we have a role, delivery partner, and have all the roles aligned on the side. Big items. And now we'll introduce a new layer of the model where we have a location. So this is an item, global item, universal, that can be used regardless of which layer you're in, wherever it makes sense and also is easy to interpret. So for the sake of showing as many as possible of the tools and annotations that are available with the ArchiMate standard. So here, pickup station. So triggers and flows to. In that case, this flows to would be more meaningful. Could be also different annotation. Association, for example, association is global, universal relation that possibly applicable to every item in the ArchiMate standard. So you can see here the items flow to the pickup station. To make it more compliant with the standard, perhaps we could add a business object. In that case, the business object here is the package or items. So the packages will be assigned to the pickup station. The process here accesses this package by delivering it to the pickup station, and the pickup items process accesses the package by accessing it. And then we can have Again, our relationship to the pickup station is that it is a flow relation. So we can see the flow with as many of the annotations for the sake of explaining the standard itself. And the role who performs this action is a delivery partner. They pick up the items and then it is delivered to a central station where then the routes are to be determined, the packages are reassigned for regions, for continents, for countries, however the more long distance routes are, or even short distance routes. So this is the hub, so we call it central hub. Create another location, central hub, central routing hub. However, we want this to be named and modeled. So this is the pickup items, and then they will be delivered to the central hub. At this stage, pickup items could be not exactly the right naming. So we think, do we need an extra step, an extra process for the delivery? Is this substantially different? Is this a step on its own? Or we can find here a better wording, pick and deliver, for example. Pick and deliver items. So for the sake of brevity. And again we have flows to the central hub location. And finally, the relation here is accessed by. So this is our domain object, the package itself, all over. In the central hub, there would be reporters, warehouse shelves, there would be a process for distribution and redistribution, routing process. So at this stage, who does this? Is the central hub. We have a role. Let's call it the logistics team, logistics partner. It could be also the same delivery partner, or they could be leasing a hub, however the situation is. And the process that will be performed here is redistribution process. Redistribution process. And the redistribution process, this is the flow's direction here would be the opposite direction from the hub to the redistribution process. The redistribution process is triggered by the logistics partner. So now we have an idea. So redistribution process, now it's larger, so it fits on one line, results in another delivery partner picks up the items in different locations and starts picking them up and delivering them to the warehouse where they have been where they have originated from. For the sake of brevity, I'll assume it is the same delivery partner. After the redistribution process, the package flows from a redistribution process to the return process or return step. This is where it will get a little bit clumsy. We will need to do a little bit more of rearranging our diagram. So we don't have crossing arrows overall, but let's first lay out our skeleton. The redistribution process results in the return, and the return is performed by the delivery partner. And finally, the return is associated with the location warehouse or warehouses, depending, and this warehouse is inventory team or operations team, who will do the final check on the item. So final check and subsequently final check and reshelf or restore. But this is interesting because final check could result in two different situations. It could be not acceptable, or it could be accepted. So let's model that situation. So what we need at the moment is an event return accepted or approved, return declined. Now we'll see now that it's quite inevitable to rearrange our items. So now the return process, and this has triggered as float to the warehouse, and flows from the warehouse to the final check, and the final check triggers. First of all, the final check is being triggered by the inventory team. So these are the persona who triggers it. You can quite see the situation with the arrows, not quite optimal. Look quite attractive, I would say. I'll stick with the straight arrows. One of the most annoying features in the open source version is the arrows alignment. So we know where it's all starting. So now the return process has been returned to the warehouse where the final check has been performed, and this results in the situation where it's a good opportunity now to introduce a junction, and the junction is of type OR. You can see there are two types, and OR. So we'll stick with OR because there are two situations here that could happen. So this results in either accepted or not accepted. Again, a little bit messy with the arrows. Sometimes when I do the export, the alignment of the arrows is better in the exported image. So I wouldn't very much worry about the pixel to the left or to the right at this moment. So the return is declined, and this will trigger another process, which is perhaps the customer could say I would need now the returned item, ship it back to me since it is declined anyways, I can do something with it, whatever. Or the return is accepted and then the process is triggered is refund. Then we have trigger refund. This is a service that we should be very careful here now. It is a process. The other way around is the the process of return declined, reship customer. You can see that the reship to customer is again costly. Keeping it in the warehouse is costly. If the return is accepted and the item is damaged, this is actually the actual mission we have, the assignment to find out what can we improve. So we need actually to get in discussions with the stakeholders and ask them, what do you do with the damaged items? How long they stay in the warehouse, and what is the process that happens afterwards? Because this is perhaps a clue where we can also optimize cost. So trigger the refund is one option, and the second is throw away, if that's the word. Perhaps in in online store there would be a better wording for it, but let's stick with throw it away or decommission. Decommission items. So this is our actual process, how it looks like. What is the target architecture? How are we going to solve the problem? Where are we going to introduce optimizations? These are all questions that we can answer in the target architecture. First, let's save this view. I'll start by copying all the elements from the actual architecture or the is architecture and move to the target architecture. Align it a little bit, not to the top, because I want to map to the motivation layer goals. We'll go and pick up our motivation layer elements. Again, here the stakeholder is management, and they have a concern. And the concern, we have their driver, loss, returned items, loss reports. So this is the driver that initiated the entire work package. And they have set a goal. Operational excellence is one of the common goals, so we can say, and whether we say operational excellence or be more specific, we say reduce losses, reduce return losses. But then also they have set another goal, improve customer satisfaction. This problem can be addressed from another perspective. We can say we should add more quality assurance to the delivery process, to the packaging process, to the whatever happens before the customer receives the item. Perhaps this is our entry point. Not only look at the small picture or the scope of the delivery itself, of the return itself. For the sake of example, we stick to the return process, and this is the scope of this session. However, this is also an idea to consider looking at the bigger picture, because this is business architecture. Business architecture is all about the bigger picture, not to get lost in the small details, which are also necessary so that you can find out the optimization bottlenecks. But keeping an eye on the bigger picture is also the goal of the business architect. We set specific concrete goals, outcomes. So you have been sitting down with the management, hearing the briefing about the problem, and then you ask it, what would be an acceptable loss for you so that we can say this architecture work package has achieved its goals? So they said, if we could reduce loss on return by 10%, we are okay, because this is around $200 million in our yearly revenue. You can see this is an incremental process. You cannot just sit in silo and draw a diagram and say this is, hey, this is a business architecture, implement it. Never works that way. That's why alignment sessions and tools like ArchiMate or any other standard that you prefer, even if it is just a a PowerPoint with a set of boxes and it is interpretable, acceptable by understood by the stakeholders, you have achieved your goal. Your goal is not to draw ArchiMate standard specific diagrams, even though these entire sessions are about ArchiMate standard, but this is to enrich you with a set of tools, a Swiss knife that you can apply to different situations, gives you ideas, gives you ways to illustrate the gaps between the situation in the is and the target architectures. So I would never say that you should stick 100% to one standard or the other. You should, and this is also what the TOGAF says, you have the ADM method, you adjust it, adapt it to your organization processes and or structure, not the other way around. And another specific outcome in customer satisfaction, we want to say increase sales per customer by another 10%. Of course, how we come up with these numbers, this is another story. How these two interact with each other. There should be a realization relation here. So these are realizing each other. The return cost items lost there. This is an association relation. And again, one more association. Now we have realized this could be better at the top, and the concern or the driver is associated to the management. So now we have a picture where we want to go. We have set our goals and outcomes, how they are affecting each other. If we reduce the loss, is this going to increase the sales? Increase the satisfaction? What is the relationship? Perhaps we do something in reducing the loss that is going to affect the customer satisfaction negatively because we have optimized way too more than we should. So you should keep in mind that in this situation, even though it's not very easy to say how the two of them are related to each other, but we could say this influence is a negative influence. So now we have here minus minus as an indicator of negative relationship. This is also desired. So at the very early stage, you know that you have two forces that are working against each other. So we have found out that in the return process itself here, initiating the return process, printing the label, repackaging the items, and then dropping them at the pickup station, this is quite few more steps than it should. How if we could say the return process, just keep the item the way it is, and then by the next time you order something from us, this will be picked up. So the return process will take longer, but at the same time we have guaranteed that the return process is associated with another sale. Perhaps this is a motivation for the customer to make another sale. Perhaps he's already planned another sale. So say if you have already planned another sale in the next week, then this will be together added up with the return process, so that you don't have to go through the package. And then visually the delivery partner can check the status of the item and be authorized to do a quick reassessment. Of course, this is going to be a lot of discussion on what training the delivery partner needs to have in order to double check the item, perhaps document it with a camera, whatever the situation. But this is an idea. We can now customer initiated the return process, and then we reduce now our process a little bit. And we'll say merge, aggregate, bring together the return with the next sale or deliver purchase. If this is not possible, what we do, we use the old process, or we have another line for returns only that's working on returns. Perhaps we give guidance on a better repackaging and return. Instead of using a print label, we can use QR code. There are thousands of ideas. For the sake of making this interesting, we use only one other lane. Use or apply the legacy flow, the classic flow, the old flow, the standard flow. Again, this is an OR situation. So today we have seen this usage of OR. We have introduced it in the previous sessions. And then instead of going through the pickup station, now this use the standard flow, delivery partner merge the return with the next sale, the next purchase. We have another task that's performed by the delivery partner. Pre-check item or items. Pre-check and package and pick up. And in this case, we are bypassing the pickup station. Pick up and deliver items now will be the way to go. We will not model the standard flow again. Use the standard flow should be enough for the sake of this example. And then pick and deliver the items, and the flow continues as below in the direction of the central hub and the warehouse. This is one possible change. You can see changing the process at this step. One minor change, visually minor, but technically this is an entire change of the process. You need to add training for the delivery partner. So there should be another role, training, L&D team, learning and development. They will have an entire process of having training for delivery partner. And this now has been involved in the process. So you can see an entire team. It's not just one box on the screen. This is an entire team that need to be involved in the process. And the one who uses this process is served service means uses means used by. So you can see the delivery partner now would say, we have not really have a contractual agreement to get that involved. We will have a new contractual relationship, entirely new in the business model. But this is the point. The business architecture should explore options. It could be that the management says we are fine if you have a QR code, if you have an extra package, just give the customer an extra package. So when they want to do an item return, there will be an extra package they can quickly use, and it has a guide so that they can do it correctly. There could also be an idea to provide extra packages at the pickup station so that they assist and help with the pickup and do the visual check there instead of having the return item being checked by the delivery partner. All options are on the table, and this is entirely the point of modeling the business architecture, to explore all the different options and ways and their feasibility, and also revenue that can be streamed from them. We come back here to this flow. We see how this affected the outcomes that we have set in our situation. Usually there is not only the outcomes but also the requirements. So there could be an extra layer with requirements here. As we have seen, there is a requirement tool. You can add a requirement. You say to reduce loss on return by 10%, requirement, train the delivery partner on pre-checks. So this is a requirement. This is an implementable requirement that realizes this outcome. Another requirement that can be added also, add a feature to the online store to merge, highlight near future sales or deliveries. So you need to track that in the app or in the online store. This need to be tracked. If you are going to merge, it should also be notified in the app that there is a merge. It will be on the system of the delivery partner, be reflected in the ERP system. You have seen now this is getting very complicated very quickly. How are we increasing the sales? Is that by directing the customer to keep an eye on the net future sales. Perhaps they have something in the wish list, perhaps they have a plan, a to-do list of shopping lists that they need to consider. So perhaps this is a good point for them to actually perform or do the purchase. We can add a feature here, a requirement, notifications for the wish list items. in association with the return. So when he declares a return, perhaps you add a notification. Hey, have you thought about considering these wish list items you have been planning for quite a while now? This realizes two goals, it's two outcomes at the same time. And this is all how this relates to the business architecture from the motivation layer, what resources you need if you are modeling the strategy as well. So you can see our alignment now is slightly better. We come back to the point here, merge the return with the next purchase, and this is realizes the requirement. Train the delivery partner, no add a feature to your online store. So this is a realization of this goal. This is a realization. So this is the process that realizes both of them. How it is done, this is a topic for the application architecture. Perhaps we could also focus on this item and have its entire business model to get down on the deep nitty-gritty details. This is all possible. Training for the return, this is again realization of this goal. Now the part that quite amusing in the entire open source version is alignment of the arrows. Not quite difficult this time, but nevertheless not as smooth as one wishes. So we can shift this a little bit more up. We could keep it that way. So this is now better alignment. Of course, we can rearrange the bottom part of the diagram or revisit the processes, check out where it gets wrong at the central hub, where we can do slightly better at the central hub or at the warehouse, where we can introduce more optimizations. You can see that it starts with a very simple statement, but then as we dive into details, we discover more ideas, and if there are more people in the room, there will be brainstorming around this, and so on and so forth. What we can do at the moment is add our legend so that it's understood which item is modeled in this diagram. With the legend makes it easier to understand and interpret if you're not familiar with the standard. And finally, I hope that this session has achieved its goal, in which we have shown using a use case that is business architecture, one possible solution proposal of the business architecture for this return process of a hypothetical online store. We have applied many tools and annotations from the ArchiMate standard. And again, this aligns quite well with the first steps of the ADM method in the TOGAF standard, in which you are concerned about establishing the architecture capability, eliciting and getting down on the business requirements and the business architecture, defining the architecture scope of work. So this would be a good starting point where the application and the infrastructure architecture can follow on. Thank you for listening, and hopefully we can see each other in future sessions.